Hello, I'm Taylor Schneider, the Horticulture and Environmental Educator for the City of Davenport, stationed here at Vanderveer, and I'm just going to kind of go over a little overview of how you can prepare your native landscapes to overwinter and what the difference between a typical garden and a more naturalized garden might look like. So first of all, the main thing that we want to think about is our soil. So it's something that we're learning more and more about every single day of how important our soil is. So if nothing else, even throughout the year, one thing that you want to do is try to disturb your root systems and general soil structure as little as possible. So you can see here, these are a couple different types of our native plants, and most of them have almost twice as much depth in their root system than they do in their actual growth. And by doing that, it's holding a ton of carbon from our atmosphere. It's holding a lot of water. So if you happen to live in a space that may flood more easily, this is a really great way to kind of get that infiltration to happen. And it also just helps with general erosion. So our native plants are a little different than just kind of the ones that you might plug and drop in. You can get plugs if you are looking to do any planting this fall. Native plants do well, but if you're going to sow seeds this year, for instance, I would highly recommend, there's a couple different tools like this, which is a stratification guide. And basically this just tells you the time frame that a native seed needs to have cold and thaw. So we normally think of going out in the spring and just kind of spreading our vegetables or direct planting, things like that. With native plants, they do need a freeze and thaw to kind of crack that outer shell of the seed. So one of the ways that you can do that is actually sowing your seed in the fall after the first frost. So things like that will just kind of give you the more direct of each type of seed and what it needs. For instance, I have some blazing star that I collected here, and this seed structure is a little bit more like a dandelion, whereas then we come over here to our gray-headed coneflower, which are pretty tiny and definitely a little bit more protected. And then there's even stuff like our purple prairie clover, that this one in particular needs kind of a special stratification where you scratch that outer shell off. So each of these do have different needs, but if you're looking for a more naturalistic look to your garden, you can just kind of let them go about. But if you are wanting to stick to a more traditional planted or at least kind of designed garden, I would definitely recommend looking into each specific plant that you're interested in and its stratification requirements. So the other thing that I want to point out in regards to our soil structure is our tools that we use. So especially here in Iowa, we're very used to agricultural fields getting tilled and plowed into quite often and having that soil turn over. A lot of us think that that's good, but as I mentioned, our soil structure is really important. So we want to try and do everything we can to keep that intact. So I have a couple tools here that I would recommend. These are kind of the main two. This one you're probably familiar with, a smaller version. This is often used just as a dandelion root puller, but this is really great for any of those sort of, deeper rooted taproot type of plants, and you have a lot more leverage by having it be that you're standing up and you can use it a little bit easier. But this one is the one I really want to highlight. This is called a stirrup hoe, and basically it has a sharp end on both sides and it's loose. So that way, instead of just our typical way of going about with a hoe, you can actually go back and forth along the soil, and it only goes so deep. So this is a really great option if you're looking to clean up your garden before the leaves all fall and before the snow hits. This will break up that the very top root structures of our weeds, whereas a lot, again, our native plants, those root structures will be a lot deeper, so it won't impact that. and it just is a lot easier to use too. It goes back and forth very easily, and I definitely recommend trying to be as direct and precise as you can when you're cleaning up. The only other thing that I'd like to mention in regards of preparing your garden is, in general, if you have the ability to, leaving your garden as is actually a great option. And one of the ways that you can kind of facilitate that is, for instance, if you're wanting to clear off the leaves of your yard, you can make smaller piles along the edges of your lawn, and that will actually provide not only some insulation for the plants that are there, but also provide shelter and different structures for things like our stem nesting bees and other types of really beneficial pollinators that either hang out in our dead vegetation over winter, or find a little spot under those leaves, or even dig into open ground and need that protection. The main thing I want to convey is knowing that if you are wanting to have a little bit more native support and allowing our soil structures to rebuild, really being precise with your movements are going to be important, and being aware of the possibility of different insects and what might be in your area. If you have questions, I'm always happy to assist with specifics, and I will hopefully have some more info coming at you soon.